Hello, welcome to a new edition of Before the Weekend, your weekly update on things that I believe matter for the economy, society, leadership and life, and that I look at through the perspective of noble purpose and meaning. I have selected 4 topics. The first one is Black Lives and All Lives Matter. The second topic is around the World Earth Day that we have had this week. The third topic is around the impact that one man or woman can have in society. And the fourth topic is under the title, By Being Afraid of the Dead, We Stop Living. I hope you will enjoy this new edition of Before the Weekend. Welcome. The first topic is around the policeman who killed George Floyd, who was found guilty of murder. The decision of the jury released an enormous tension that had built up both in the US and outside of the US. And it seemed to me as if the judgment was more of a symbol of further liberation of and respect for the black race than the judgment itself. And I was wondering actually how it is possible that in the 21st century, in 2021, there is still so much racial inequality in the US, the so-called largest economy of the world. Maybe it has to do with the fact that the US has an unfortunate, very long tradition with slavery. That was a normal part of the economy and of the way how people were looking at each other, or at least how white people were looking at black people. I still have difficulties to understand that in 2021, with all the progress we have in technology, in science, in ecology, in society, there is still massive amounts of people that are being discriminated because of the fact that they do not have the right color or do not belong to the so-called right ethnic group. And I have a problem with discrimination. I think it's okay that we are different from each other. I do definitely think that it is totally not okay to discriminate in whatever way, in whatever form, other people. And unfortunately, it is not only the black people that still too often are being discriminated, but we have other examples, like what happens in, as we speak, with the Rohingya population in Myanmar. We have the Uyghur population that is being to say the least, treated very badly by the Chinese government, and it is being put in camps, and it is still very mysterious what is happening with the Uyghurs and some other ethnics around them. We have quite some discrimination of Romani people in Europe. We have also, obviously, certain racism and I would say built in the system in Australia with the indigenous population that is still being said of having less opportunities and possibilities to progress in life from the non-indigenous population in Australia. So the point I'm making to conclude is that differences are differences and they are okay. We can learn from each other differences. Discrimination, no way okay. We cannot accept it and we should not accept it. And I want to understand what we need as human beings to stop discriminating others. What is it that we need within ourselves and from our governments and the people who lead us to stop doing that? April 22nd, we had the 51st Earth World Day, which is an international event celebrating around the world the pledge to support for environmental protection. The organization behind earthday.org's mission is to diversify, to educate and to activate the environmental movement worldwide. Growing out of the first Earth Day in 1970, earthday.org is the world's largest recruiter to the environmental cause, the environmental movement, working with more than 75,000 partners in over 192 countries to drive positive action for our planet. Now, as such, the initiative is great and I totally support it. And at the same time, I'm still wondering, and it is kind of cynical that we must celebrate an annual World Earth Day to remember how important the planet is for us. We are only temporarily occupants of the planet. And we should leave it in a much better shape than we have found it. We should leave it for the generations to come. And I would like to share a text by Chief Seattle, who wrote that in 1854 for his people, the Suquamish and Duwamish tribes. And he wrote the following: "The president in Washington sends word that he wishes to buy our land. But how can you buy or sell the sky, the land? The idea is strange to us. If we do not own the freshness of the air and the sparkle of the water, how can you buy them? Every part of the earth is sacred to my people. Every shining pine needle, every sandy shore, every mist in the dark woods, every meadow, every humming insect. All are holy in the memory and experience of my people." Unfortunately, as we all know, it turned out quite differently, and up to today we humans, we believe that we own the planet, that we own the ecosystems, the sky and the earth minerals, that we can slaughter animals as we see fit and as it pleases us. And because we have been and still are messing up our planet, I believe that we need to become aware the hard way. And maybe the current pandemic is one of the hard ways to teach us, to learn us what we have to do differently. I personally believe that COVID is not going to be the last pandemic for as long as we don't really reconsider the way how we live and the way how we interact with our planet and the way how we interact with nature in full respect of our planet and the ecosystems, of which, by the way, we are part. The third topic is around the impact one man, one woman can have in society. This week, USA President Biden has held a virtual climate conference, climate summit, and his intention is to take the USA back into the Paris Agreement and also to play a major role, a leading example role in the much needed climate transition. Now, I'm using President Biden's decision as an interesting example of how one person, in this case Biden himself, can make a massive difference in the world, for the world. I have always been intrigued by the way how people use impact and power and how they use influence, how they influence others. And it says a lot about the personality of the person and what kind of vision of the world they have. The danger is when people with lots of power and lots of impact use their power for negative reasons. And very often we see that their decisions are made by ego or by egocentrism or egoism or by a narrow view of the world or society, by lack of consciousness, by short-term thinking, by greed, and what have you. And we have some examples. Recently we have had President Trump. We have had Hitler that wanted to build a Third Reich and did massive massacres to try to obtain that. We have also had in '91 the Nobel Prize that was awarded to Aung San Suu from Myanmar, and the way how she totally lost her reputation by not appropriately reacting to what was happening with the Rohingya people in her own country. But we had also that same topic of using badly power and influence with business leaders, with artists, philosophers, writers, even with scientists. We have seen some interesting cases in history. But obviously what I'm interested in is the positive cases and the way how men and women of reputation use their position to help progress society, the thinking, mankind. And I would think of Nelson Mandela, despite the fact that he was black and that he has been for decades in prison. I'm thinking of Simone Weil, despite the fact that she was a woman. I'm thinking of Bill and Melinda Gates, despite the fact that they are billionaires. They use their fortune for very positive things, amongst them their foundation. I'm thinking of Mo Ibrahim, who despite the fact that he is black, despite the fact that he comes from a not social upper class background. I'm thinking of Greta Thunberg, despite the fact that she is a child, or that she was a child when she started, and also that she is autist. And I'm also thinking of Malaya, the Pakistani children's rights activist who got shot and who has been standing out as a young child and as a young woman. So for me, it's not so much who you are, but what you do and how you do with the influence and the power you have for society. Last topic is around the fear for dying. We have stopped living. What do I mean with that? It occurs to me that a lot of people in my environment, they are actually doing okay, despite the fact that we have the pandemic. They are successful in their activities. They have no breakups in the relation. Family is doing well. They are in good health. But they are only doing okay. And we have had a lot of conversation around that, and it started actually interpelling, and I was thinking about it myself. How am I looking at what is going on? And actually I started also realizing that despite the fact that I'm doing well, that the relationship is going well, that I'm in good health, that business is thriving, that I have a lot of great things going on with the promotion of the book and what have you, that at the same time there is also sort of like something holding me back, and this is a very new feeling to me. This is something that I really not have, and I started researching for that, and actually I came to some really interesting insights. That is that in psychology, we humans we live kind of like on a spectrum somewhere between flourishing, being in flow, and being in depression. So we have really a big range. And flourishing is being in flow, is doing great, is having lots of energy, is really being on top of your game. It's where time, space, all what you do is kind of like coming together. We forget about time because we're so motivated. And depression is really the other opposite. It's like feeling useless, worthless, drained by energy, not being able to see positive things, to look through positive lenses at life. And it is actually the sociologist Corey Keynes who came up with the notion of languishing. And I find it a really interesting concept, so to say. So languishing is the zone in between flourishing and in between depression. So we're not super flourishing, but we're also not really depressed. We're kind of like in the middle. And it's a feeling of like living with the brakes on, living not fully. Something is keeping us back. And obviously when we start thinking where that comes from, definitely it's from this pandemic we're all going through. There are several things that make us live like that. First of all, we have the fear of dying, because a lot of people around us have been sick, or that is at least what we have been taught to believe. That is what we see all the time in the media. Maybe we have been sick ourselves, or people very close have been sick, or maybe even people around us have died. Then there is a lot of things we cannot do anymore. So we're really very much confined, and we really put in lockdowns, and we have a lot of our freedom that is taken away. And the third thing is that we have no idea of when things will be solved and what is going to happen in the coming months, maybe even in the coming years. So that creates a very bizarre mix of uncertainty, of confusion, of fear. And it is that emotion that leads to this famous languishing, which is this being in the void, being in the middle zone somewhere. And what I believe is important is that we look at how we can get out of it. This pandemic is unfortunately gonna go on for some more time. So I think we need to think of different things. And my recommendation would be, that's at least the way how I'm doing it, is I'm taking time to meditate and to be physically active. So doing sports, in my case also yoga, and being conscious of what happens. So mindfulness is also something that I find really important and that is really helpful as well. And the third thing that I learned is also accepting that we have that feeling. So it's not trying to push back the feeling, but it's really fully accepting the feeling, and trying to look what is going to come afterwards. And we all know that we're going to go back to a certain normal, even if we have no clue, no idea now what that normal is going to be. But it is the aspiration to be able to go back to that new normal. And by that, creating positive thoughts and positive ideas of what is going to be our future life or our new life. So this languishing is really an interesting theme that I wanted to bring in as a worthwhile, I hope, reflection for the weekend. I hope you have enjoyed this before the weekend. I wanted to take a different angle, less business oriented, but more society and philosophy and human factor oriented. If you have enjoyed it, if you found it interesting, please like the video, speak about it, share it with friends, with people, with colleagues, with acquaintances. I hope to see you back next week for a new episode. And for now, as always, enjoy your weekend.